Welcome to the Sanj essay video portion where we delve into the stylized violence of Sin City and its justifiability within the context of the film. Have you ever heard someone say that they appreciated a film for its authenticity or that it looked really real? Well, I want to review a film that's like the exact opposite, where I appreciate the film because it's the most unreal film I've probably ever seen. And that film is Sin City. Directed by Robert Rodriguez and Frank Miller, Sin City presents a gritty and morally complex world where violence becomes a means of justice. Join us as we explore how the film employs stylization to depict violence and examine its role within the larger narrative. The world of Sin City. Within the film, violence is deeply embedded in the corrupt and lawless cityscape. The stylized depiction of this violence serves as a reflection of the brutal reality of Sin City itself. The film presents a morally gray world where justice is corrupt and characters, played by Bruce Willis, are driven to take matters into their own hands. The stylization of violence reinforces the idea that extreme measures are sometimes necessary to combat corrupted power structures within society. The visual aesthetics. They play a crucial role in justifying the stylized violence. The high contrast, black and white cinematography, coupled with splashes of vibrant colors like the Yellow Bastard, which represents the slow poisoning and corruption within the city, it creates a visually captivating experience and clearly communicates to the audience. The stylization elevates the violence beyond mere brutality, enhancing the film's artistic and graphic novel-inspired atmosphere. It allows the audience to engage with the violence on a symbolic and metaphorical level. Characters and motivations. The characters in Sin City are driven by a sense of justice, revenge, or redemption. The stylized violence they employ serves as a means to achieve their goals or protect the innocent. It becomes a tool for these characters to take control of their own destinies and confront the corruption that plagues Sin City. The stylization amplifies the impact of their actions, emphasizing their determination and the weight of their choices. In graphic representations, becoming visual metaphors for the characters' struggles, their inner demons, and the consequences of their actions. It allows the audience to delve deeper into the moral complexities of the narrative and offers a heightened cinematic experience that goes beyond surface level violence. The stylized violence within the film can also be seen as a response to real world injustice. The film portrays society as plagued with corruption, where the law fails to deliver justice. The stylization of violence becomes a means for the characters and the audience to confront the injustices that they see around them. It becomes a cathartic outlet for expressing frustrations with an imperfect world. In conclusion, the stylized violence in Sin City can be viewed as justifiable within the context of the film. It serves as a reflection of the morally complex world that these characters and their motivations may seek justice. Now, let's compare Sin City to those other films with the so-called naturalistic violence. You know, the ones that aim for gritty realism. Well, Sin City flips that on its head and says, nah, we're going all out with stylization. It's like a slapstick comedy of violence where the punches have a touch of cartoonish hilarity. Who needs realism when you can have outrageousness, is what Robert Rodriguez is saying. Through its visual aesthetics, symbolism, and storytelling, the film elevates violence to a metaphorical level, providing a unique lens to explore these themes of corruption, redemption, and the pursuit of justice. By understanding the stylized violence, sometimes that's what it truly takes to kill those bastards. The filmmakers go all out with practical effects, CGI, and impressive editing to make each fight sequence a visual feast. It's action-packed goodness that will leave you cheering for more. Not only does the film utilize a three-point lighting system, but all of the sequences are fixed sets, not a shed of natural light anywhere. It's all motivated lighting. It adds the manipulation and the effect that they were trying to achieve to eliminate any sense of realism or naturalistic depictions of violence. It creates a visual separation. The green screen creates a clear visual separation between the characters and their surroundings. It exists in a heightened, almost surreal state. It blurs the boundaries between reality and fiction, underscoring the larger-than-life nature of the characters and their actions. The visual separation represents the character's detachment from the corrupt and morally ambiguous world.
No Country for Old Men, directed by the Coen brothers, is widely recognized for its extremely brutal, naturalistic violence. The violent sequences in the film are not stylized very heavily at all, and are meant for the audience to absorb the brutality of what's happening rather than to take pleasure out of them. No Country for Old Men's opening sequence introduces the audience to its main antagonist, Anton Chigurh, and sets the tone for the rest of the film. At the beginning of the sequence, Anton Chigurh is arrested by a nameless police officer who takes him back to the police station, where Anton strangles him to death with his handcuffs. While Anton is choking the police officer to death, there's no music and barely any noise at all. All the audience can hear is the squeaking of the officer's boots as he struggles for his life, and his pained, pointless, hopeless gurgling as he is killed slowly by Anton Chigurh. The Coens show the strangling for as long as they can. It takes up about 40 seconds of screen time, and they do this to show that the violence in the movie will not be glamorous, it will not be aestheticized, and it will not be exciting. It's brutal and slow, and it highlights the meaninglessness at the center of No Country for Old Men. The meaninglessness of death is further accentuated less than a minute later into the film's runtime. Anton steals a police car and pulls over a random driver who he asks to step out of the car, and then he kills him with his air gun. Even though the driver is killed much more quickly than the police officer is, his death is in a way just as sad because he is killed like an animal for essentially no reason. His death is also shown just as naturalistically as the first death. The filmmakers aren't trying to glamorize their violence or get the audience to be entertained by it either. They are just showing a death of a character. When he is shot by the air gun, all we see is a little flurry of blood come out from the back of his head, and he collapses to the ground. Once again, there's no music in the scene. There is just the sound of the gun and the sound of the man's body hitting the ground. The naturalism of the violence in No Country for Old Men helps to underscore the filmmaker's idea that human lives are expendable because they don't have inherent value, and our deaths are just as meaningful as a cow's death, for example. This happens many more times throughout the course of the film, notably during the scene where Anton catches up with Llewellyn Moss, who has stolen some money that Anton has been hired to retrieve. During that sequence, we share Llewellyn's perspective for the entirety, and once again, the violence is not stylized at all. All the noise we can hear are the sounds of gentle footsteps, silenced shotguns, broken glass hitting the ground, all sounds that Llewellyn would hear in the moment. And during the scene, he goes to a truck driver who just happens to be passing by, gets into his car, asks him to drive away, but before the driver can do anything, he is shot twice in the head by Anton from a distance, who we do not see. The driver's on screen for about 3 seconds, and nothing is made of his death. It's understandable for Llewellyn to not really be too concerned because he's scared for his own life, but the directors also don't make a big deal out of it, and his death is just as important to the scene as a window being broken. Although up to this point in the film, pointless deaths have been reserved for unimportant side characters, major characters also die this way. The two most notable examples of this are the deaths of Carson Wells, who is an operative who is also trying to get the money, and of Llewellyn himself, who dies off screen and not even at the hands of Anton. The deaths of these major characters are treated just as nonchalantly as the deaths of minor characters. Just because they are important to the plot does not mean they are actually important, is what the directors are attempting to communicate. And even the main protagonist of the film doesn't even get an on-screen death. These deaths are just as naturalistic as the deaths of the minor characters earlier in the film as well. Carson Wells dies slightly out of frame, and all we hear is a gunshot and then his last gasp for life. And Llewellyn, we don't hear anything because he dies off camera. The consistent realism of the violence is meant to reinforce the director's ideas that violence and death are not glamorous, and that the hero of the story can die with a whimper quietly in some backwater town, while someone like Chigurh, who might be perceived as deserving of death, won't die, because that's not how death works. To the Coen brothers, death is inevitable, grim, and meaningless. And by using naturalistic violence rather than more heavily stylized violent sequences, they avoid imbuing their film with pulpy or unserious tones, and it allows them to better communicate the serious themes at the center of their story.